Good evening. I'm Daryl Steinberg, the mayor of Sacramento, and I want to welcome you to my Facebook Live. And I would like to welcome into the studio here, the StreamYard studio, my colleague-to-be, Councilmember-Elect Mai Vang. Welcome to you, Mai.
Hi, Mayor. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great.
You're doing good?
I'm doing fine. You know, today I got to be one of the 55 California electors to cast a vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And even though, you know, it was the outcome was known, it was really a great feeling and a great honor to stand up for democracy. It's really cool.
That's awesome. That's
great. So I had a good day. I hope you had a good day.
Yeah, it's the busiest Mondays of all Mondays. So it's hard and hustle no matter what day it is of the week, right? So it's all hard and hustle, lots of work.
That is the way you roll. Well, so this is the third, and by the way, you know, Katie and Sean, we're saving the best for last here. Not really, but all together, I've had the opportunity to do the Facebook Live on Friday night with Katie Valenzuela, Councilmember-Elect District 4. This morning with Sean Laloli, Councilmember-Elect for District 2. And now I get the opportunity to just have a conversation with you, a public conversation. And while we will be talking, you know, one-on-one many times, I hope that we can do this a lot because I think it's a great opportunity to just sort of share what we're up to at City Hall with the public. And I know that this conversation tonight is the last time that I will refer to you as Councilmember-Elect, because tomorrow is the day that you get sworn in for your first term representing District 8 on the City Council. And I want to ask you, when you raise your right hand tomorrow, what's going to go through your mind?
That's a really great question. I haven't gotten there yet. So, because it's just been work. But what I will share is I'm having an incredible human actually swear me in. That's my high school teacher, Miss Jean Crowder. And one reason why I'm having her actually do the swearing in ceremony is because had it not been for folks like her in the community, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. You know, she worked with me when I was a student at Sacramento High every Tuesday and Thursday night till 11 o'clock to make sure that I completed my college applications, my scholarship applications. You know, she believed in me, and you know, I'm having her swear me in because I think we need more Miss Crowders in Sacramento. And so I hope that I can make her proud. You know, when I sit on the dais and I'm doing everything I can to fight for this community that I love.
That is a great story. And so, you know, most people know your amazing story. The oldest, right, of 16 children. You grew up here in Sacramento. It's so inspiring, you know, every time I even think about your, you know, barrier-breaking life and what you have done and what you are doing. What do you attribute your success to? What is it among all of the experiences in life that got you to this point?
Yeah, you know, I would say the easy answer is hard work, right? Which I definitely have a hard work ethic, but I also know folks that work extremely hard and they're not able to be self-sufficient or are still struggling, right? And the reason why I'm able to be here today is really because of the entire village that helped raise me, community members. And so I would say, you know, I have to pay it forward to them, all the elders and aunties and community leaders and teachers who have uplifted me when I had really tough times, you know, as a teenager. My family, you know, there's been so many folks in the community that has helped my family when mom and dad came here as refugees. And so, you know, everything from our public school system to the government system to community members, that's the reason why I'm able to be here today. And so I actually want to give them a shout out, right? So the answer, Daryl, is hard work, but I think hard work in itself is not sufficient because we see that even with hard work, families are struggling to get by. And so I would say, you know, we need a collective community effort to make sure that we leave no one behind.
No question about that. So You have served 2 terms on the school board, correct? Or a term and a half?
One full term. Yes, 4 years.
One full term, boy, 1 full term. And so that was not easy public service, especially given all of the tumult in the city school district and the fights between the district and the teachers union and all of the problems. What lessons do you take from that experience over 4 years that is going to help you as a city council member?
Yeah, I would say one thing is that, always staying laser focused on those most in need, right? And especially, as my last school board meeting was last Thursday. My focus have always making sure that we, meet the needs of our families that are left behind, our students that are left behind. That has always been my North Star. And that will be my North Star when I become a councilwoman, is fighting for our most vulnerable communities. I think some lesson learned as well is understanding that, I came in as an elected official from being a community organizer. And I think for me, oftentimes when I was protesting, I would assume that, elected official had a magic wand, right? And, sitting on the dais, I also understand that it is absolutely a collective effort, that if anything, if not just the position of an elected official, but as a community organizer, there's so much power in the people, right? In organizing and making sure that, as I'm pushing a progressive agenda, that you bring community along the way, right? And that is what I plan to do when I get to City Hall. I think that is some of the lessons learned. I realized that things that I was able to succeed in had large community support and making sure that we had the groundswell, right? And it's going to be really important. I always tell this to community members, to organizers, that when you get a candidate elected into office, you can't leave them alone there. It's going to be really important for the community to be part of that process. And so, I said this during the campaign, and I'll say it now, that I'm bringing everyone with me to City Hall, because it's not one elected that can solve an issue, or even folks in the dais, Mayor, it is the people that's gonna govern. We're governing, but it's the people that put us there, and we have to make sure that we meet their needs.
So let's break that down a little bit, because I agree with you, but pick an issue for me and for the viewers around something that is really crucial to District 8, to the city, that you want to organize around and make change for.
Yeah. So there are a lot of issues, Mayor, but I would say right now, I don't think anyone would have imagined last winter that we would be in the middle of a global pandemic. And one of my priorities right now, especially as I was out talking to voters and constituents, is really COVID recovery, right? And when I say COVID recovery, that touches everything from our unhoused neighbors to our young folks who are struggling with distant learning, to our seniors who may not have access to meal. And so the covered recovery is going to be absolutely important for me, because I've said this before, and this, Mayor, that right, COVID-19 doesn't discriminate, but the system that we have does. And our reactive approach to this type of emergency triggered by COVID really reveals some of the structural failures where our most vulnerable communities have really bear the brunt of the devastating effect. And so COVID recovery is a top priority for me, and making sure that we actually look at it from a racial equity lens. And, I was following the council meeting last week, and I know that Councilmember Jay Shanera and Councilmember Eric Guetta led the initiative, the racial equity initiative. And I look forward to working with them and the council on figuring out what that means. I did review the framework, and I'm excited that the city, is taking this position, right? It is long overdue. But a big part of that, I will also say, is it is also folks who, sits in those seats, right? It's really important to make sure that you have folks with different lived experiences at City Hall with those lens, because they understand the lived struggles of communities on the ground.
That is for sure. So you mentioned COVID relief and COVID response, and this year, of course, been dominated by COVID, and of course, the City Council this last year took the $89 million of CARES relief that we were able to get from the federal government. We barely met the threshold. It was 500,000 population. We came in at 508, and the difference was 89 million. And of course, we chose, even if it was imperfect, we chose to invest it in the community, in small business and workforce and youth and housing and homelessness and tourism and the creative economy, especially around our diverse communities. The challenge that I have now and that we're going to have together is that absent another federal stimulus package, which we hope is forthcoming at some point, how are we going to sustain those kinds of investments in those categories through our city's general fund? And so it begs that question of, that I know I've tried to get at with some success, but man, a long way to go, whether it's Measure U, whether it is expanding the definition of what the city considers to be a core function, i.e. investing in our communities. How do you view the city budget and how we ought to, approach that fundamentally as a new council member?
Yeah, I would say first, right, I think I mentioned earlier that, when COVID hit, right, a lot of city governments, school district, across the state, across this nation really took a reactive approach to this emergency, which makes sense because, I think there are failures in our structures, right, not having guardrails to protect the most vulnerable. And I do think COVID, even though given the situation, gives us an opportunity, Mayor, to rethink how we fund programs, how we fund services in the city of Sacramento, right? Because if we made sure that we protected our most vulnerable communities, I think that the reactive approach to responding to all the crisis. We could have, I don't think that it would have been that intense, right? But no one expected COVID. But I believe that because we don't have structures in place to protect our most vulnerable, that is what we saw during, and even now during this pandemic, right? That families are still struggling. And so as we move into into budget conversations, I think, making sure that we do an assessment of city services, figuring out what works, and are we reaching those most in need? That's going to be a priority for me, and making sure that our dollars are actually touching the residents that need it the most.
Yeah. It's they say that a budget is the value statement of any governmental organization, and we'll be at it soon. There's the mid-year budget, which we will begin looking at in January and early February, and then of course we'll have the next fiscal year budget. You've talked some, correct me if I'm wrong, about the people's budget. Talk about what that is and what it represents, and is it more of a statement of principles, or is it sort of a specific line item of how the city should spend its dollars?
Yeah, I will first give credit because, Mayor, the thing is, I'm not leading that effort, and it's actually community activists and organizers on the ground leading that work around the people's budget. And I actually think, Katie Valenzuela, because I was running a campaign, when she won in the primary, hit the ground running to really work on the people's budget, which is kind of modeled by what happened in LA. And, the intent of this is really making sure that when we think about budgeting, that community members are actually part of that process in terms of what are the priorities that they want to see in a budget, right? Because at the end of the day, Mayor, your seat doesn't belong to you, right? It doesn't belong to anyone who's going to run.
It does not. No.
It does not belong to you, Mayor Steinberg. It belongs to the people, right? And so I think this push, this people's budget, is really about making sure that the people's values are reflected in that budget. And so I would challenge you and all of our colleagues to take a look at those recommendations as we move forward when we are having budget decisions, when we're making decisions around budgeting. That's going to be really important. We got to make sure that everyone's at the table. I'm always, whenever we are at the table, I always ask myself, like, who else is missing from this conversation, right? Because even you, myself, we all have blind spots, and it's really important to make sure that collectively we have everyone's voice in the process.
So how do you deal as an elected official? Again, you've had some experience of the school board, but now you're entering into this new arena with people either who are your colleagues on the city council or in the community who may have a different view than yours. I would overstate the divide in the community, but there are some who believe that the city ought to stay in its lane and that it ought to primarily fund public safety and a little bit of parks and recreation, but it really ought to focus on the core. And then I have been someone who has challenged that. And I get the sense that you and Katie especially are going to challenge that notion even more. But then you've got people on the city council who see it the other way, and people in the community. So how do you see that fine line between fighting for your principles and the people that you represent and compromise in order to get something done and to move forward?
Yeah, so first, Mayor, I know how to count to 5. I will start with that first, because I think a lot of questions that have been posed to me and Katie is that, can we count to 5, right? So, I mean, especially coming from a family of 16 children, I know that
you definitely count to 16.
Yes,
Sorry.
you definitely have to have compromise. You have to find common ground, right? And I always come in with a growth mindset, Mayor, because I do believe that every council member that's sitting on the dais, I always have, thinking about their the intent, right? That they love this community deeply, and they want every resident, every child, every senior, everyone to reach their full potential. The problem is, we all just have different strategies on how to get there. Right. And we got to work through that messiness, right? What that strategy is, what that policy piece is. And I actually think, through conversations, not violating Brown Act, obviously, that we can get there. I can get to my 5 votes, to move Sacramento in a way that's progressive, that doesn't leave any communities behind, right? So that's the first piece. I can count to 5, and I know that you got to seek common ground, because I do think every council member cares deeply about this city and they want what is best.
No doubt. So another concern I hear all the time, and again, I'm talking about the way people talk about my agenda, and I actually view our agendas as having a lot of commonality. It is this idea, and I've talked about this with Katie as well, that the city needs to invest in its communities that have been traditionally disadvantaged, and that we need to invest in human beings, not just in providing the basic services. But the criticism sometimes to me, and maybe you hear it as well, is that, that's all good, but, the county is the Health and Human Services agency. They're the ones with the budgets to be able to do that, and that's their responsibility. How do you respond to that? That the city should be doing what the city does, and that the county should be doing more of at least the health and welfare part of serving the people?
So I would say, Mayor, those are not separate things, right? So here's the thing. We have a responsibility as a city to deliver core city services, and we have to make sure that, we're meeting the needs of the residents instead of that. But we also know that if we don't tend to critical issues like our unhoused neighbors, we know that that's going to impact everyone in the city. And so it's a collective effort. Absolutely. Like the county, gets dollars for, criminal justice, for health and human services. They need to definitely step up. But as a city, we also have a collective responsibility. And this also takes me back to, being a school board member, right? That when I think about our schools are only as strong as our neighborhoods. And, if our neighborhoods are not doing well, in terms of our parks, access to resources, community centers, we can't improve outcomes in the lives of students and families. And so we are all connected, whether you're serving at the county, whether you're on the SMUD board, right? We are serving the same constituent, and it's incredibly important that, we work in collaboration to meet some of the toughest issues that we have in the city. It's got to be a collective effort, not just on the city, right? And when we talk about youth, that's not the responsibility of just Sac City Unified School District or Elk Grove Unified School District, because in my area, I have 2 school districts now that are within my boundaries. And so when we talk about even, support for young people, it's not just on the school districts to do that, but a collaborative approach. It's a city county effort about, how do we leverage resources to support our young people, right? Because we have organizations that are asking multiple jurisdictions for funding, but if we can somehow streamline all of that, that would be really great, right? It's absolutely a larger conversation, Mayor, that needs to happen. But we got to do better in making sure that we leverage resources from one another.
No doubt about it. Let's talk about housing and homelessness for a few minutes. This past week, I put out a proposal that's gotten a lot of attention that says instead of, fighting for the money and then figuring out how we can match it with a project where a council member or a community leader or nonprofit is ready to build something, that we ought to do a master plan for siting, for a program, for operation, and for finance. And that once we vote on that master plan, that the sites ought to be set without any more debate or anybody being able to say, no, you can't build there. What are your thoughts about how we ought to approach this citywide and the many layers of challenge that are involved in trying to make progress on the homeless issue?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Mayor. I think the first piece, the stats on this, that on any given night, we have over 5,000 Sacramentans that are unhomed, right? And that's one number, but, we're getting anything estimates up to 10,000, right? And so you and I both know this, that, when folks are living on the street, they have a shorter lifespan, right? And so shelter and housing is absolutely a priority. It's like we have to make sure that we stabilize what's happening right now. But I do want to just, give you credit and shout out and appreciate your announcement last week to develop a citywide master plan to address homelessness, right? I do just hope that this plan is inclusive and allows for community input, because I think oftentimes, you saw with the Meadowview shelter, right? Even though I was in support of it, Mayor, I think there were many folks in the community that didn't support it because they were kind of left out of the process, right? And that's their truth, and those are, things are moving fast, right? And we have to make sure that we move with intention and that we include all voices. And so, I look forward to working with you and our colleagues to develop the citywide master plan, but we have to also make sure that we include everyone in that process. And then oftentimes, there's always promises that are made or things that happen in the community. It causes mistrust, and it's going to be really important. I know that I have to be a steward of that community engagement. It's my task as a councilwoman, so I look forward to doing that and making sure that everyone's part of that process as we move forward.
And you will do it well, I have no doubt. But do you believe that the not in my backyard phenomena is overrated, that it can actually be overcome with greater community engagement? Or in the end, are there still going to be people who say, despite all of your outreach, despite all of your work, even if it makes sense, I just don't want this anywhere near where I live?
Yeah, I do, Mayor, because I think when I talk to, community organizers, when I talk to residents, neighborhood leaders, right, they also care deeply about our unhoused neighbors, and they want to make sure that, we take care of them, right? I think the big part is making sure that they are really part of that process as we're deciding how to move forward. We as Sacramento, as District 8, are only as strong as our neighbors who are vulnerable. And if we don't protect them, then that will impact all of us, right? And so that message really needs to be clear to all Sacramentans that, when you tend to those most marginalized and those in need, and those are our unhoused neighbors, then everyone else in Sacramento will do better. And I think that's got to be the message. And that's what we need to do and share as we move forward on this citywide plan.
Yeah, and I'm counting on you and others to insist throughout this process, which will begin the 5th of January, that we are working with the community closer than we ever have before, but at the same time, we are insisting on making progress and actually bringing people indoors at a much faster pace than we have been able to thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Talk to me about other priorities. Tell me your other priorities in District 8 specifically, what it is you envision for the district.
Yeah. So, I think I talked a little bit about COVID recovery, but I think what we also saw, and we knew this before, is that, we also have a food desert in District 8, right? Food insecurities. And you see that with the Great Plates meal, right? Making sure that we attend to our seniors. I would say for decades, a lot of policy decisions made on the environment have really left diverse neighborhoods behind. And, we got to do something on addressing the food desert in South Sacramento. So an example, Mayor, is that, we passed the urban ag ordinance, which is something that I, was a strong supporter of as an organizer. And even when I worked in Carr's office, right, even though he opposed it. But you can pass an ordinance, but it's always in the implementation, right? And I don't think that a lot of city resident folks know what they could do actually with the urban ag ordinance. So we gotta make sure that we do better in terms of the implementation, right? I think that District 8 is well positioned, to be the heart of the farm to fork movement. We talk so much about the farm to fork movement, and I always share that, oftentimes in South Sacramento and District 8, we have families that don't even have forks, right? And so how do we, build upon the strength that we have? I mean, in the heart of District 8, we have Luther Burbank, our amazing, bug program, the Burbank Urban Garden, right? We have a ag pathway. How do we build on that? We have talented Hmong and Black farmers in our district. We have vacant lots. So, we are well positioned to actually be the heart, the heartbeat of this, but we just need the political will and the folks on the ground to push this. And so food justice is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, especially, as a school board member. We have seen that oftentimes our schools are the only places where our families get their meals. That is a reality in South Sacramento. And so that is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and hope to move on that here as a councilwoman at City Hall.
So I want to ask you about your views of the business community and whether or not you believe that part of our mission to be able to provide more public resources to our communities in need is to also be intentional about contributing to the buildup of our economic base with private business. Do you talk about that a little bit and how you think about that connection, if you do think of it in that way?
Yeah, I think any successful entrepreneur requires capital, right? And so it's going to be really important to set aside economic grants and making sure that they're actually distributed to Black and minority-owned businesses, right? I'm talking about the mom and pop shops. I'm talking about the day-to-day minority businesses in District 8, right? Oftentimes, even before this pandemic, I think many of our minority-owned businesses have shared with me that they've always felt left out. And so we got to make sure that they're actually at the forefront. So that's the first piece, right? My focus is really on that. And it's really about, who has the capacity to have who has capital to actually start businesses, right? And oftentimes it's not folks that look like us. It's not Black, brown, or Southeast Asian folks of color. And so that's going to be really important. If the city is really talking about supporting businesses, then we have to make sure that we're talking about the small minority-owned businesses that is really the backbone of this economy. So
I agree with that. But I want to just take it a step farther because I just want to explore what you think, for example, about a citywide vision to develop the waterfront, and to make Old Sacramento a more modern attraction. Whether you think we should be investing resources in trying to build up tourism in the city to attract more people who are going to spend their tax dollars in the city of Sacramento. Some of those big picture things, right? The community center theater, the convention center has already been approved and we're moving forward. But whether or not you think it is important to focus on some of those citywide amenities as part of building the city that you want to see.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Mayor. And I will ask you the question, in any projects that we do, I would ask the question, when I approve it or if I support of it is this project advancing an equitable development, right? Because I think year after year, what we've seen is that local governments, local and state governments, right? I know that you've worked in the state as well, is that we spend millions of tax breaks and other subsidies in the name of economic development, which is important, but we have to make sure that these investments, actually can deliver good jobs and business opportunity for folks on the ground, right? And so I'm a big proponent of community benefits agreement on large publicly subsidized development projects, right? I think that's a good start, and I think everyone on the council should all be equity advocates, right? We should always be asking the question, does this project actually, improve the lives of those most in need? And if it doesn't answer that question, if you can't show me the data, then it's going to be a hard case for me to support it. If you can prove to me, Mayor, that this project is going to help those in my community that needs the jobs, right? You absolutely will have me as someone who will be supporting that project, that contract, that initiative. Again, it's asking the question: is this advancing equitable development in our communities? That is always going to be my question, right? So yeah.
I think that's the right question, and the art, of course, is to not make our politics either or. I mean, the idea that these big projects, whether it's Aggie Square, for example, or the waterfront, that to bring more economic vitality, more jobs, more vitality in general to the city is a good thing, but it can't be opposite of including the people from our communities as beneficiaries and even prime beneficiaries of what it is we are building. We're negotiating a community benefits agreement around Aggie Square, for example. There's still a lot of work to do. And I'm sure you will be engaged and involved in that in some way. For all major development, you're right. We need to have a community benefits agreement, but the argument also goes that if you don't encourage the economic development in the first place, you never even have a chance to negotiate the community benefits agreement. And so I'm always encouraging that we do both and that we try to bring them together.
Yeah. I hear you on that, Mayor. Absolutely, right. And the reason why I'm advocating on the other end, because I think oftentimes the other side, we don't hear advocates, right? We don't hear folks pushing on that end, but I don't see them as separate, right? So I definitely think it's definitely on both ends. But the reason why I'm so vocal on that piece in particular is because, oftentimes I think we're just not seeing the impact on the ground, literally by our young people and our families, right? And it's going to be really important that, whatever we push in the city, we got to make sure that, that those folks are the one benefiting from it. At least that is the community that I'm fighting for. And that is my commitment, my promise, during the campaign as a young organizer, that has always been my focus. And so those are the values that have always guided me. And that's what I plan to do when I get to City Hall.
Beginning tomorrow at 5 o'clock, how are you going to celebrate virtually? And it's really unfortunate to me, as I've said in the other conversations, to win an election like this is a big, big deal. And, I think what we're going to do is maybe when the vaccine is all out there, we're going to recreate the swearing-ins for all the new members so that you can all have real in-person celebrations. But in the meantime, what are you going to do tomorrow night virtually to celebrate?
I'm probably just going to hug my dog, Coffee. She's over there right now. But, I think, one, I know that a lot of folks will be tuning in. And so, me being sworn in, it's not just me, Mayor, but there was an entire community that ran with me, right? And so I would say we are being sworn in at City Hall. I'm just so proud of our campaign because, we had, our campaign was incredibly diverse. We have folks from all walks of life, race, ethnicity, gender, mobility, folks who couldn't speak English, right? There was a role for everyone in our campaign. And I think that is a reflection of our city, that there's a role for everyone in the city, right? To make it the best that it can be so that Sacramento can reach its full potential. But we are planning a celebration event, another community swearing in on Saturday at 11 o'clock. And so if folks can't tune in on Tuesday night, we will be holding a virtual community swearing in, making sure that we acknowledge all the great folks on the ground that made this one possible, but also to introduce our team Heart and Hustle. Like that was our campaign hashtag was Heart and Hustle, and I have assembled my Heart and Hustle team, and I'm so proud of them. I always say it's the team that makes the candidate, and I'm a true believer that it's also the team that makes the elected official, right?
Do you have an announcement? Any announcements as to who the Heart and Hustle team is?
Yes, so my chief of staff is Kat New, so shout out to her. She has years of experience working at the Capitol in policy, but has also been a chief of staff. She was the first Cambodian chief of staff ever, and so I'm so excited that she will be bringing her Heart and Hustle to City Hall. I have my comms director, Ryan Brown, who was my campaign manager, right? I think one of the responsibility of a council person is also to be a good steward of community engagement and make sure that we have accurate information out to our community. And so Ryan is going to be at the forefront of that. Jaime Cervantes, right? He has led the District 8 Latino Advisory Committee, the Latino Festival in District 8. He was there when I actually hired him as an intern, and he has grown over the years, and I'm so excited to bring him on. And last but not least, our youth engagement coordinator, Sierra Northcutt, a high school student at Luther Burbank that's going to be leading all the District 8 youth initiative in our district. And so, I'm so proud of the team that we have assembled, the Heart and Hustle team, and I know they're going to do great work. And so I'm so proud of them. I'm proud of our community. We got to pull our sleeves up. It is heart and hustle always. We got to keep working hard for this community because there's a lot of needs. So,
you know what? I feel your passion and your energy, and just want to welcome you. You're going to do a great job, and I look forward to being your colleague, Mai, and get a good night's sleep. And tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life.
The first day, absolutely. Lots of work ahead.
And of your first term. And I wish you nothing but the best. And thank you so much. Any last words before we sign off?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to give a shout out to the incoming council members. If they're watching this, Sean Lololi and Katie Valenzuela, I just want to give y'all a shout out. We've been talking back and forth, but I said that, I will give them a shout out. So thanks for the reminder. So I just want to give a shout out to them. Congratulations to them too. I'm really proud of both of them, and I know they're going to do great work at City Hall as well. So absolutely.
And your mayor gets sworn in for a second term tomorrow.
Oh, that's right.
But it's just
Councilmember Guetta as well, right? It's all the
Guetta as well. So you know what? It's okay. It's about the new folks who are coming in for the first time. But I'll look forward to raising my right hand, just after you, and we'll all get started together. Thanks so much, Mai, for coming on tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Have a good night. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.